On the 25th October 1854, 670 cavalrymen were ordered to charge the opposing Russian Empire. This was dubbed the Charge of the Light Brigade and is commonly considered a tragedy which can be controversial when it comes to who is to blame. Lord Raglan ordered the charge, Captain Lewis Nolan gave the message, and Lord Lucan led the charge. All three can be considered to blame, and while this is not the main theme of the poem, it is briefly mentioned with the poem stating that someone had blundered and that the soldiers did not make reply or reason why. This segment of the poem includes a rhyme at the end of each line, 3 times before the next ending with death, which is capitalized to suggest that they had entered the territory of death itself. The mention of death in the first stanza is actually a biblical reference to Psalm 23, with the Valley of Death referencing the journey into the Valley of the Shadows of Death. This inclusion of biblicism combines with the already morbid situation with the serious tone of religion. The poem in total has 6 stanzas with lengths varying from 6 to 12 lines each. The varying nature of the structure of the poem may be in reference to the disorderly nature of the charge itself, or the chain of commands that led the men to their deaths. The aforementioned dactylic dimeter is especially important because it helps set the atmosphere of the poem with the rhythm of stressing and unstressing syllables, mimicking the sounds of horse galloping with a deviation from the form potentially indicating a disturbance among some horses, or especially near the end, the demise of the cavalrymen. The various stanzas in the poem take turns establishing a different perspective towards the poem. The first establishes the subject of the poem, with repetition giving a great sense of movement. The second includes the thoughts of each soldier involving with a rhetorical question, inviting the reader/listener to consider the battle more deeply, with the poem asking if there was a man dismayed, and following up by playing into the overarching themes of bravery by calling attention to how the soldiers knew their duty was to do and die. The third contains the introduction of Russian weaponry, with a cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon in front of them, to create an appropriate level of tension to convey the magnitude of the situation. The description of the cavalry being volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell, demonstrates the chaos taking place with reference to weather implying unpredictability and a turbulent nature. The inclusion of such plays into the somber tunes while still maintaining the sudden and severe nature of the assault. The stanza ends with a description of the charging into the mouth of hell to further highlight that the horror took place with yet another religious reference. The fourth stanza brings another series of rhyming lines with smoke, broke, and stroke to create a more fluid sense of motion at the peak of the charge, with an included mention to the outside world wondering why would they charge at all. This notion is not followed up with anything else, but it is mentioned later to maintain the theme of disorder. The stanza then mentions the actual retreat, but making sure that the soldiers are not portrayed as cowardly, with them shattering and shundering Cossack and Russian. The fifth stanza is almost identical to the third, but includes the falling of horse and hero, and mentions them escaping the jaws of death, left of 600, referencing those who died in the charge. The sixth and final part of the poem makes sure it is heard and remembered that their glory should not fade and that noble and honourable, through the use of rhetorical questions and abundant exclamation marks. With these themes in mind, it is very reminiscent of one of Alfred Tennyson's earlier poems called Revenge, a Ballad of the Fleet, which detailed a race-built galleon facing incredible odds against the Spanish in 1591. The ship faced 53 Spanish warships and lasted 3 days, and being boarded 3 times before they were defeated. The poem included 15 stanzas and an irregular rhyme scheme, similar to the Charge of the Light Brigade, while Revenge has lexical repetitions and anaphora throughout, and while it is different in many ways, the use of rhyming structure and the overarching themes make them quite similar. The difference may be a result of a battle between the Revenge and the Spanish happening longer ago, giving Tennyson much more insight and more time to prepare and create the poem. With Revenge, a Ballad of the Fleet, being more of a historical retelling, while the Charge of the Light Brigade is more of a reaction to the events that transpired. All in all, the Charge of the Light Brigade can be seen as a cautionary tale regarding the nature of blindly following commands. However, on the most part, it's a requiem for the soldiers who died and tribute to their patriotism. This is especially apparent when compared to The Man He Killed by Thomas Harvey, despite also being based off a 19th century war with heavy focus on the perspective of the soldiers involved. It instead decides to explore a much grander theme and ideas through the point of the ordinary people, such as considering the meaning of war, exploring the inherent irrationality of conflict, and diminishing the value of patriotism, instead of hyper-focus on bravery and honour present in Tennyson's work. The fact that The Man He Killed has a very standard rhyming structure, while the Charge of Light Brigade lacks one, is a testament to their difference. However, credit is due to Tennyson on account of the fact he allegedly wrote his poem in a mere few minutes.